Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first Wonderland Engine Community Workshops event. A workshop in which we will bring you 3 awesome workshops from the community, sharing their knowledge and experience of what they have built in the past couple of months and years. I'm really excited to have you with me here on Twitch and on YouTube. And before we go in, I want to quickly mention, for those new amongst you, Wonderland Engine is a development platform for VR, AR, and 3D on the web. It comes with a very accessible editor that you install on your system and then hosts a web server to provide a wonderfully rapid, efficient workflow to create WebXR applications that you can then deploy anywhere on VR, on AR headsets, on desktop, and on mobile. Wonderland Engine has a high focus on performance. That means we do the optimization for you, and you can actually focus on what your app does best on your experience. I want to note that the workshops coming up are not necessarily beginner workshops. So you should have a bit of experience with Wonderland Engine to have the best viewing experience here. Though if you don't worry, you can go and get into Wonderland Engine and then later come back to these talks. They will be recorded and uploaded to YouTube. Feel free to join along anyway and see what's possible in Wonderland Engine. So I brought 3 resources here that I want to quickly highlight because we either improved them or added them over the last 3 months. And that is our new Q&A forum, which is basically like a Stack Overflow experience. You can ask questions, and the community, as well as the Wonderland team, will answer your questions, whether they are super specific or basic. And it's also a great place to look for answers to questions that may have been asked in the past. We also uploaded a couple new YouTube tutorials and have a very nice introduction to physics in Wonderland Engine coming very soon. So be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. And finally, we have a set of very small and written tutorials that are really just bite-sized around a tiny topic. And recently we got a nice contribution here by Meetkai, so feel free to check those out as well. So let's get into today's agenda. We have 3 long-standing members of the community in this event today. That is one, Yinch, who is going to give you an introduction to physics-based grab and throwing interaction. That is in only 10 minutes, so super efficient. You're going to learn a lot. Timmy Kokke, better known as Sorskoot, will show you how to render custom Skydomes in Blender to basically expand the space in your VR experiences. And finally, Florian Isikci who is, by the way, a co-founder of Construct Arcade, will bring you some insights into how they structured their latest experience, their climbing game, Boulderworld. The format of these sessions is very straightforward. It's going to be 10 minutes for each session, and afterwards, we're going to have live the speaker on the event, so you can ask questions in the YouTube and Twitch chat. And those Q&A sessions will be around 5 to 10 minutes as well. So without further ado, let's get into Grab and Go, Fast Track to Throwing by Yinch from Playcrew Studios, best known for the SkiFit 365 experience, which is a skiing game on Construct Arcade you can play for free. It's even featured in the Oculus browser. He will give you more insights in a moment. And he's also working on a mystery project he might eventually be able to talk about, but we're very excited to show that hopefully soon. And with that, Yinch, have a go.
Hello everyone, my name is Yinch and I am the founder of Playco. We made a game called SkiFit 365, which has been featured on the Quest new tab page, and this was made using the Wonderland engine, which I think is a superb engine for making WebXR content. The Wonderland community is full of contributors who have added projects and templates for you to get started quickly in WebXR. And today I will be using one of these starter projects made by senior people to make a grab and throw experience based on the WLE PP library made by senior people. Let's get started. So with the project unzipped, I open it up and there's 3 and I choose the one that says default by itself. And at this point I can do a thing where you can either build it in here or you can build it externally. Let's do it in here. I'm going to make a copy of the project and we'll call it thrower. So I'm going to open the project. I'll do 2 things first. I will first change some project settings. Change the name of the project to thrower. And the other thing I need to do is I actually need to turn on the physics enable there. I'm also going to be needing some materials for the objects I'm adding to the scene, so I might add some materials as well. That's under views, resources, and materials. And I'll just use this create material to create 4 materials. You can rename them here. I'll call this mat material 1, and then create material 2, create material 3, and I won't be able to change their properties until I attach them to an object, material 4. The next thing I'm doing is I'm going to add actual items to the scene. Going back to the scene here. So first I'm going to create the ground object, which is a mesh. Choose mesh. You look at the properties. It needs 2 things filling in. For simplicity, I'm going to use a primitive cube and call it material 1. And at this point, I can set the material's color to what is sort of like a ground color, which I'm going to say is brown. Maybe a bit darker. So that's ground. Is at position 0, 0. We probably want it to be bigger and lower. So I'm going to make it bigger by doing this first. 10, 1 high, 10. And because it's 2 meters high, 2 meters tall, I'll position it so now it's level with the ground. I'm going to call this object ground. Next, I'm going to add a table object, which will be another cube. So add another mesh. I'll call it table. I have to choose the mesh again. I'm going to choose cube. There's the cube. Use material 2 for this. And just to make it distinctive, we'll just choose a different color. Let's choose a purple color. Purple's always fun. And then it's embedded in there, but that's fine. And I also know that because of it being at position 0, which is exactly where you're standing, you don't be standing inside the table. So I'm going to move the table across a little bit. So 1 meter across, maybe a little bit more. Let's say there. Next, I'm going to add an object to put on the table, which is another cube again. Another cube. Material 3 for this one. It's a much smaller object. 0.1 by 0.1 by 0.1. Set its color to, say, red. And I'm going to position it above the table. It's there. Okay. And I'm going to call this cube. Then the last object I would add is something slightly in the distance. Another mesh. I'm going to call this target. It's another cube, but stretched out, primitive cube. Set it to material 4. And I think I decided to make this color yellow. Sort of a golden color anyway. And its size is, I want to be tall and thin, so I'm going to make it be, let's see, this sort of wide, probably this tall and this deep. I think that might be a little bit not quite skinny enough, so let's do this. See, it's embedded in the ground because the center point is down there, so I'm going to move it up slightly, and I'm going to move it here, slightly higher. Okay, so this is the scene objects setup. Next, I'm going to add physics to these objects. So the physics I'd switched on already. I'm going to start with the ground, and I'm going to add physics. Physics, it says. And for physics, we could tell it a few things. Firstly, we want it to use a box for its collider. And you know we made this 10 by 1 by 10, so let's do that as well. 10 by 1 by 10. And it's static. Can we see it? Is it 20 by 2? Oh, actually, it might be because I haven't turned on the visualizer. There we are. So it should be 10 by 1 by 10. So you'd run simulation once just to make it appear. Turn it off. Okay. Next, the table. Also, we want to add a physics to it. And this time, similarly, we want it to be a box. It's static. And this one is 1 by 1 by 1. 1 by 1 by 1. And let's do a simulate. Then you can see the purple outline showing you where the collision is. Next, we add this cube, physics to this cube. Add component, physics, and you see it's sphere there, but we want it to be cube again. And here is box. This one's slightly different because it's going to be a dynamic object. So instead of turning the static on, we'll leave static off. Make the extents match 0.1 by 0.1 by 0.1. If you stop the simulation, it goes to resting position, and if you turn it on, it simulates, and you can see it falls down and meets the table. And then finally, there's one more object that we want to add physics to, which I call target physics. And the minute you add something to it, the simulation starts. I'm going to turn the simulation off for the time being. And add a box. And we just copy the scaling that it has to the extents. 0.1, 0.5, 0.2. And with gravity on. So if we do the simulation now, these two objects fall down. Okay? And that is the physics running. Let's turn it off for a second. So next thing you want to do is to make this little red object here. I'm pressing F to center on it. Oops, F. Is I want to make this a thing that can be grabbed. And this is where we start using some of Pipo's library. Go here. We can close this up. Add PP grabbable, because this is a grabbable object. And because we want to be able to put our hand into it so that it doesn't move away, I'm just going to go back to the PhysX component and make it trigger. There's physics to add to one more thing I forgot about this, which is to the hand. So under the player, look for the right hand and add a component. The component you want to add is physics. If you open up physics, we'll use a default sphere, that's fine. Radius of 0.1 and make it kinematic, so it'll follow where the hand controller is moving and not just be simulated and like fall to the ground. And also make it trigger so that the hand can pass into the object to grab it. Now for the interaction. We want this hand to be something that can grab. So we do add component and look for PP grabber hand. And be sure under PP grabber hand to set the handedness according to the controller it's attached to. In this case, it is the right hand. And we're going to use the grip button or the squeeze button to be the thing that activates the grabbing. So now that we've made the hand be the grabber, let's make this cube here be grabbable. Add component, look for PP grabbable. Let's have a look at that, and it just be all default values. So now this is ready for a simulation. And then we do that by building it and start the server. And I'm using localhost over USB cable to test it in my Quest headset.
Wonderful. So if you want to go ahead and ask your questions in chat on Twitch and YouTube, we have Yinch here with us. Yinch, welcome to the stream. Thank you so much for your talk.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be able to contribute to the community. We've been very helpful in terms of learning the skills and having the tools for making WebXR rapidly. Wonderland is fantastic.
Perfect. Wonderful. Thank you so much for your kind words. And so let's see. Do we have any questions already?
I see something from Kibloy.
So Kibloy asks, how many objects with physics can you add in WebXR performance-wise? Does static versus dynamic make a difference?
I actually had senior people help me with an experiment, and you can get tens of thousands of static objects for collision and thousands of dynamic objects. I think we got it up to something like, I'm not going to remember the number, but it's like 15,000 static and 2,000 something dynamic, some crazy number. It was a huge number. And so it's high, it's in the thousands. Obviously, you don't get so much performance if you use a triangle mesh or convex mesh, but certainly with the primitives, you can get a lot, thousands or tens of thousands.
All right, so it depends on the static versus dynamic, and also depends on the shapes of the collision, I guess.
That's right.
Very cool. Aino asks, and we have this cool feature here, what was the library used for the grabbing logic?
The grabbing logic is provided as part of the WLEPP repository that I mentioned at the beginning. Within that library, if you use the default templates, or you can possibly use the bundle that comes with it, it provides a series of helper components, which includes the grabbing logic. So yeah, it's part of WLEPP.
I think an also easy way to get to it, I think we're linking through the component registry. So on wonderlandengine.com/components, /registry, pardon. That's where you can also probably find it quite easily. Question from me in the meantime, while the rest of chat is gathering their questions. Maybe off topic, because we don't have to constrain ourselves to the talk, right? And I know you did an entire podcast on this.
Yes.
And for everyone who wants to get some details, Yinch was on the White Rabbit WebXR podcast talking about this specifically. What was your biggest challenges on the SkiFit 365 project?
It was trying to balance a good quality of visual experience with high frame rate. Skiing is a high speed sport, and I was building experience with the oversight of skiers who know what skiing is like. And so trying to make the environment look nice and realistic and immersive while maintaining the frame rate was the biggest challenge. And Wonderland was the only engine I know that could do it. And I've had Olympic skiers plural, say that being in SkiFit 365 is like real skiing, and they do it as their job.
Amazing, thank you. We have a question by La Majestic. That is, I like the example, thanks a lot. Are you working on a physics-based game? Anything you can share?
I am working on a couple of physics-based games, although I guess it'd be more accurate to describe them as physics-based experiments. And I'm hoping that if the mechanic proves to be compelling, that I'll put it into a game. But so nothing concrete at the moment, but part of trying to figure out what sort of game to design came from doing the load testing to see how many objects we could get. But the results have been very, very promising, and I'm surprised more people have made physics-based games with Wonderland, actually, considering how fast it all is.
Very cool. All right, Giorgio Tedesco asks, does it also work with static objects, like for a climbing game, for example? I guess for the grabbing.
Sure. I think you would probably end up using the collision system rather than the physics system for moving the avatar. But the actual expert, when he comes on later about climbing, is Florian. So I will defer this question to him, because he wrote his entire wall climbing game, which is superb and brilliant. And I don't know how he did the implementation, but I'm sure he'll have more details for you.
Yeah, perfect. That's a very nice outlook to our third session that we're going to have today. So I'll give chat another chance to maybe come up with another question. In the meantime, I want to highlight some of the work that you've been doing also. I know that you did some experiments with like cross-browser multiplayer. You want to get into what you did there? Cross XR, AR, VR, like multiplayer experiments.
Yes, we actually set up a very, very early experiment where it was for product designers, where one of the, like, for instance, the product designer could be in VR with an object and be walking around it and speaking, and the client would be visiting the same space from their phone. And that way, and they could use their phone to walk around the object as if the object was inside the room, and use their pointer to indicate stuff. And they also had speech. And so we did this quite very, very prototypey experiment. But I was speaking with a researcher over in California, and she was in her VR headset, and I was on my phone. So yes, we've done AR and VR mixed spaces.
Amazing, very cool. And finally, one last question from myself again. I know you're the originator of the Canvas UI library. You want to go into why you wrote it, or why Playco wrote it, and what you're using it for example?
Canvas UI, to explain it, is a library that allows you to very rapidly build user interfaces in the Wonderland Engine's texture system. And we built it because we were making a more complex UIs for the player, and we wanted to be able to build those up quite rapidly. And so rather than having to use manual positionings or stuff, we wrote it in such a way that it had all the behavior of widgets and stuff, and you could put UIs together in minutes. And so there was a demand for more complex UIs, and we wanted it to be able to be customizable and be very functional, so that people could start building your own UIs quickly. And so we were motivated by solving our own problem, but then we open sourced it so that other people could also benefit, because we need to work together.
Perfect, and thank you very much for that. I think it helps out a lot of people. All right, Yinch, again, thank you so much for your session. I hope that people will build way more physics-based games now.
Definitely.
Thank you for also being here in the live session with us. And with that, we will move on to the next talk. Thank you very much. Bye, Yinch.
Bye-bye.
So our next session is going to be The Skydome is the Limit by Timmy Koke, also known as Sorskoot. Sorskoot has built a big set of library of games that are all released on Constructorcade and playable there for free. I think many of them even featured on the VR browser tab and, on the Meta new tab page as well. And Timmy is also known for streaming endless hours of Wonderland Engine development on Twitch. Without further ado, let's get into a technique he used in his last game, which is Get Off My Lawn, to increase the perception of space in VR.
Hello everyone, I'm Timmy Koke, better known as Sorskoot. I work as a mixed reality developer at WebXR during the day, saving lives with holograms. But at night, when my whole family sleeps, I build my own VR games, mainly using Wonderland, Blender and some other tools. In my latest game, Get Off My Lawn, I create a special Skydome, giving the illusion of a much bigger world than there actually is. In the next couple of minutes, I want to show you how you can create a similar effect. We're going to start in Blender, where we'll be using an example scene from the pack I used to build the game and render a special kind of image, an equi-rectangular image to map on the inside of a sphere. And then we use that inside of Wonderland Engine as the background of our game. I removed everything that was below the horizon, everything that is not going to show up in the video or in the game anyways, everything that's inside buildings, I removed it basically for reducing the render times. By default, there is no background in the renderings in Blender. I wanted to have a clear sky. To add one, you have to go to World Properties and add a sky texture by clicking on the yellow dot next to color and select sky texture from the list. Make sure the type is set to Nishita for the best result. To make sure we can see all the changes we are making to the settings of the sky texture, we need to set the viewport shading to render preview. We're going to start by changing the ozone value of the sky. I have no idea what these values really mean, but just changing them makes the sky look better or worse. So let's change this ozone value to 5. Now let's see what's happening when we change the dust value. I think this should be a very low value. Let's just change this to 0.35. That's better. Last one, the air value. Let's see what's happening. Well, 10 gives a nice effect, but it's not what we need. So let's figure out a little bit. 0 looks a bit like night. No air. Let's set this to 0.45. Yeah. I think this looks okay. Let's have a look around. Where's the sun? There's the sun. The sun is very, very little. Very tiny. So let's make it a little bit bigger. I think 3.5 is a nice value to use. There we go. Now I think the sun is set a little bit too low. Let's move it a little bit higher in the sky. Oh. Set it to 60 degrees. Was it that? Yeah, I think that's a nice height. Now I want this to be a little bit more near the mountains, so let's just see if we can change this value a little bit. You know what? Just set it to minus. There we go. I think this looks great. Now that we have our sky, let's add a camera. Just hit Shift A and select camera. I'm going to move this a little bit. Let's move it, let's see, 10, no, let's do 3 meters. Oh, no, it's the Z-axis. I always mix these up. Let's set that, yeah, there we go. I'm always mixing the axis up. So now we have a camera, but if we hit F12 to render this camera, you can see that it's not something we could map on the inside of a sphere. We need to transform this into a 360 image, an equi-rectangular image. To do that, let's go to the camera settings and change the type to panoramic. Equirectangular, yeah, there we go. And that's all the settings we need basically. Now just hit F12 to render. And as you can see, it's rendering a nice 360 image of our entire scene. Now if we would use this image directly, we would get a very, very low res image. Just because we don't have enough pixels on the image. So let's fix that. Let's just go to the render settings and change the resolution to 4096. There we go. I think the rest is okay. Now let's hit F12 to render the complete equirectangular image. Now with the magic of editing, we can skip pretty much the entire rendering process. And there it is. Now let's save the image so we can use it in the next step. Let's call it Skydome and save it. To create the dome part of the Skydome, I've created a new scene in Blender. I'm going to delete everything and create a brand new sphere. You can see it's nice and round. We need to scale it up. I'm scaling it up to 100 meter radius. There's nothing in my scene that will be outside of that, so 100 meter radius is fine. Next, we're going to add a material for our sphere. Just creating a new material. I'm going to add an image texture. There we go. Let's open the image of the Skydome and connect the dots. And there we have our Skydome mapped on the sphere. But it's on the outside and we need to have the inside. Therefore, we need to flip the normals of every face. Now there's a little trick to make them visible, or the orientation of the face visible. Go to the view settings, you can set the face orientation to visible. Now everything is blue and we want them to be red on the outside. If they're red, we're seeing the opposite side. We're going to into edit mode to select all faces. We're going to hit Alt N and select flip. And now the sphere is red, which means we see the faces from the back side. Let's turn this off again. Now nothing seemed to have changed, but we're looking at the inside of the sphere now. Now we need to export this to an FBX file. There we go. Save it. Skydome. And hit. Oh, let's apply all the transforms and hit export. There we go. Now let's open this in Wonderland to see how it looks over there. Inside Wonderland, I'm going to create a new VR project. And I'm going to the models folder. I'm just going to drag and drop the FBX and the PNG file we created into the models folder. Now to get the Skydome into the scene, I'm just dragging it to the root. There we go. Now we need to reset the scaling to make it perfect. There we go. Now it's a sphere of a 100 meter radius inside our scene. Now to make it not affected by lightning, we need to change the pipeline to flat opaque texture. Now there is this sphere in the middle, and that's because the far is just a little bit out of range. So let's set the far clipping plane of the camera in the editor to 150 and do the same for all the other cameras as well. So we're going to the non-VR camera, set that to 150. Set the left eye to 150 and set the right eye to 150 as well. So now it's all fine. And I think this is it. So let's just see if it runs in the browser. There we go. This looks nice. Looks nice. Now you might notice there is some stripes and artifacts everywhere. Let's close these. And that's because of the compression. Now, this is not the most effective way of doing this, but it works. I'm just going to disable the compression for now. And that should get rid of all the weird compression artifacts. Let's restart it. As you can see, it is way smoother now. Cool. Let's just check it out in VR. I'm here in my VR headset, in my Quest headset, and it looks amazing. It's pretty performant. I can walk around, just teleporting around in the default scene. And the weird thing is, it looks like there's actual geometry everywhere. And that's all I have for you today. I will be releasing a written version of this tutorial as well. So make sure you look me up on YouTube or on Twitter. Just search for Sorskoot and I'm pretty sure you can find me. If you have any questions, I'm always hanging out in the Wonderland Discord as well. So look me up there. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye!
Wonderful. What a amazing result he has there in the end. We are lucky to have Sorskoot with us live here. Let me see here. Sorskoot, welcome to the stream.
Hello.
It's amazing to have you here. Thank you so much for your talk.
Yeah, it was fun to do.
So we have 2 questions already. Let's get started with Ilya Dukeshi is asking, does it need to be in render mode or material mode is enough? Do you know the context?
Yes, this was the moment I switched to render mode because the sky is not visible in the edit mode. That's basically it. So you have to go into the render mode to see the sky.
Okay. So I guess there's another mode called material mode, which...
Yeah, you have a couple of those modes. One where you see the materials, and there's the last one, and you saw the rendering going on every time, which indeed was cycles, which is something that came up as well. I forgot to mention that you need to switch it to cycles to get it to render. But yeah, that's it.
Okay. Next question then. WireWiz asks, I didn't know that Blender had a panoramic mode. Is that a base part of Blender or does it need a plugin?
It is a base part of Blender. Yeah, I didn't know either. I found this and like, yeah, I need to do. I can use this and I did.
It's super convenient.
It worked out pretty good. You need to check out if you want to see it. You need to check out Get Off My Lawn on Construct Arcade.
That is a perfect segue into our next question. Kibloy asks, Get Off My Lawn has shadows on all the objects. How did you do that? Is that more Blender magic?
Yes, that is more Blender magic. That's a bit more. So what I like to do is bake all the lighting into the scene. So there's basically a couple of big. I think Get Off My Lawn is only one big mesh. With one texture that is baked, and all the shadows are in there. Now that is not out of the box Blender. I use two extensions to do the baking.
Do you, off the top of the head, remember which extensions they are?
It's Simple Bake for the baking, and another one to do the UV mapping. It's just those two make it very, very easy to do. I know the baking of lighting in Blender is pretty tough out of the box. With Simple Bake, it's just one click and it bakes.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah, it works really, really well.
Super cool. All right. And another question by La Majestic. Thanks. Can you explain why you use a UV unwrapped sphere, please? Can we use equirectangular texture sampling like in the custom shader tutorial?
I haven't tried that. A sphere is. I chose a sphere, so this whole process works in any engine. I was doing the equirectangular thing when I first started doing WebXR, WebVR back then. In A-frame, there was a Skydome, and you just slapped an equirectangular image on a Skydome. I bought a 360 camera so I could stand outside, take a 360 image, slap it on the inside of a sphere, and it worked. So I guess I still do that. I haven't written a shader to do, but you can do it with a shader as well. You just need to look it up and change it according to the camera. I think that might be possible.
All right, wonderful. Very cool. Let's see if there is more questions.
And I didn't do anything special with the UVs there. It just by default the sphere is UV mapped already, so that makes it very, very easy to do.
That is, of course, very convenient. Yeah. I guess a question for me: what's your next project gonna be?
I have no idea yet. I've been doing a lot of stuff lately. I built a small game for a game jam, but it wasn't Wonderland. I am planning to pick up the farming game and the zombie shooter I was working on.
That would be really, really cool. I loved Farming Valley VR.
Yeah, me too. Although there things are going to change dramatically there. I think in gameplay, I wanted to leverage the loading of scenes in Wonderland to make it easier to have different areas that you can work on. What I really liked about the latest few games was that you can they were all room scale, so you're actually standing and you can walk around. The Christmas game, you needed to step aside to pick something up, put something down there, and I want to incorporate that in the farming game as well. And the same with the baking of the lighting. Right now the farming game is all dynamically generated, and baking of lights in a generated world is pretty much impossible to do. So I want to do to change that as well. And the same thing for the zombie shooter. I want to start baking lights there as well to really get an atmosphere going. But both, yeah, I'm going to continue working on that.
That's cool. Looking forward to especially the farming game. I mean, people can definitely check out the games that you already have for free right now on Construct Arcade. And it's quite a few of them, right? With like the biggest probably being Storage Space 13, which originally won the JS13K Games Jam. Do you want to talk briefly about the process of migrating from the previous engine to Wonderland here?
I think it was almost a complete rebuild. The thing with Game Jam code is that it's often really, really bad. So I did a lot of things more efficient. The performance of the original game was bad as well. So I really wanted to do a couple of things different. Challenges were that mainly the animations in the shaders, the images that I used it's all big pixel art, and I had a couple of animations in there, just a sequence of 4 or 5 images that loop. So I needed to write some shaders to get that to work. Yeah, the basic game logic. A couple of things were just copy paste and change a namespace or a function call every now and then. everything that wasn't really core. I think the original was built in Play Canvas, and yeah, everything that's Play Canvas native needed to be replaced with Wonderland native, which worked pretty easy.
Great to hear. Wonderful. There's one last question by, again, La Majestic. Can you explain, please, how you made the people throw trash and get off my lawn? Was it an animation or does it use physics?
Well, both. It's using physics. It's mainly a timing. There's an animation of the kids that throw. That's just a simple animation that they. I think I used Mixamo to grab an animation and throw that on some kids of a throwing motion. And then I just animated the kids up and down, and at the moment they are up, I spawn in a trash thing, and then use physics to give it some force forward, and then just let it throw.
Super cool.
I think there's a timer in there to shut it off. Otherwise, they land and they bounce and they bounce again and bounce again, and eventually they started jittering. So I think after a second and a half, I stopped the physics on the objects.
All right. Very cool. So Sorskoot, thank you for taking the time to do this Q&A session
anytime.
as well, and thank you so much for the session. I hope we'll get a lot of more experiences now with like vast scopes. Absolutely wonderful to have you on, and thank you for being such a great part of the community.
Thank you for having me. All right.
Bye, Sorskoot. Wonderful. And with that, we get to our final session by Florian Isikci from White Rabbit and Construct Arcade. It's climbing up an inside look into Boulderworld, and you'll learn how Boulderworld was structured to help work with the art side of the team, and you'll learn about some of their internal systems, which is going to be very interesting. Florian built a huge range of experiences already and has always been pushing the limits of WebXR. You will probably recognize also these from the new tab page. So without further ado, let's get into Florian's talk.
Hello everyone, my name is Florian Isikci. I am a WebXR developer and the co-founder of White Rabbit and one of the co-creators of Construct Arcade. And today I will be talking about my current project, Boulderworld, which is a WebXR climbing experience / game that you can play right now on Construct Arcade. I won't be going too much into the code as it's not open source, but I'll be talking about how we achieve a lot of the interesting systems within the game. So if you haven't tried out the game, I'll give you a quick overview of how it happens. So you start off the game in this dark room with the logo and press any button prompt, and once you press it, you have this menu in front of you. You can do a lot of things. You have a cursor in your hand. You can select go into a shop. You can, if you've played the game, unlock some points. You can purchase watches. You have a watch in your arm that tells you the real time, and if you're in a level, it tells you the current time you have on the level. And when you start the game, you have the option of selecting between two halls. Here the big one and the small one. And if you select the level, you can view the level, and if you start it, you get teleported to the wall to start the game. Let's get back to how we do it. The menu, as you saw, has some interesting animations. It slides back and forth depending on what you do. So if I go back, it fades back in, and so on. And it's all different panels. So how we achieve that is we have a component on each menu item that determines how the buttons are managed, goes through the hierarchy of the menu and adds the right components to it. Basically just standard Wonderland Engine things. So for example, this has a collision component, a cursor target, and interacts on button prompt with the script. Yeah. Next thing that I want to talk about is this fading effect within the game. So whenever you do something, there's this fading that moves the player or changes the environment, you get this fading effect, which I think is pretty cool. We achieved that with the help of a fading sphere. So this is basically a sphere, a large sphere that we've imported from Blender, and it has its own material, which has its own pipeline. So if we go down to resources and pipelines, we can create new pipelines here by duplicating. And this one in particular is called Fade In. It's a flat alpha masked pipeline that basically just blends the background in and out. And we have a script that basically controls this. The animation as well as this are controlled by a JavaScript library called Anime.js. And Anime.js does a ton of things. So it can be used to move any element within your browser window, but you can also use it just to change values. And so what I do here is I iterate over a value that is child of the component. In this case, it would be called current fade. And in the update function, I just set the color to current colors alpha specifically to the current fade and set the materials color to that. Once it's complete, I set the animation to null. I'll explain that why in a second. And the only other important thing when using Anime.js is that you call the tick function with this specific get time function that gets the time of the application and then, uses that to calculate the animation's current state. Besides of having this interesting fading mechanic, we also have some cool stuff. So we have a ton of levels here, and we manually place the grips in the engine as it's visually a lot easier to review. We also want to have all the grips available at all times, so we don't want to do too much pulling there. How we manage those is we place them in a hierarchy. So we have, for example, handles for levels here that just marks the handle parents, and all the handles for one specific level are just within one parent. So if I were to move this, you would see how this moves. And also all the data for the levels. So each level has specific things like where is the bell going to be, or how is the player going to be positioned when he starts. So we manually move objects to the space, and then we just copy the positions into this level data, and we just load that each time. And that helps our more visual teammates as well, as they will be working mostly in the editor, that they have a structure that they can rely on. So another cool thing we use in Boulderworld is once you complete a level, you have a certain time and you have achieved a certain amount of stars, and that needs to be saved. Obviously, as players, when they come back, they want to have their scores be saved, and they want to maybe have the gear saved. So in order to do that, we have a class called save data, and what that is basically, it's just a JSON structure that is saved as a local storage item. So I would definitely recommend local storage.getItem or local.storage.setItem, and you can just use that to save any JSON data and then load it on init, and then you will have a save data system. What I would definitely recommend is, though, try versioning your save data, as when you update your program and have more complex data, you will have to check for newer additions and update them as well. So be aware of that. Another interesting thing is, so since we have a gear option here for the store, we need to make sure that all the things that we want to do are referenced in some way. So we have a reference component. I call them just reference holders that just reference images that we're using within our application. So for example, if I were to go to the shop, you will see that we have a ton of images here that just change depending on what the state of the shop is. So we'll have item this, item that, and these also have corresponding models that need to be referenced. They have textures. They might also have additional functionality that we don't know. For example, for the watches, it needs to be marked that they have circular or square shaped UI, so that we can change the menu items depending on what type of watch has been chosen. And that's being done in script, but also by referencing them over on the components. So for materials, we have some for setting gear and for watches, all that stuff. Another thing, level loading. So how we load the levels and visualize them, that's actually pretty cool. As you can see, we have a ton of grips for each level. So once I click on them, they're displayed in this transparent material that's yellow. But when I open the level, each of them will have the same material each time. So we have to make sure that the materials are cached. So how do we do this? What we do is we just iterate through this list of handles that we have over here, smaller handles, there we go. And then we just iterate through a list of these by sorting them. So each of these obviously have the same materials and the same meshes. So what's important though is just to make sure that the orders are the same, because sometimes when you call get component 0 returns this and this or this. You can't be sure that this order is the exact thing you're gonna get. So definitely make sure that when caching stuff like this, you use the same algorithm for every time. That's been working pretty well for us. And for this rail system, we obviously had to do a custom behavior with this rail system component that then disables and enables its materials for the whole thing in a different manner. But yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. I am Sryle on the Wonderland Discord. I would love to help. And I've been doing WebXR game development for a couple of years now. It's been so much fun, and I love working on games like this that push the limit of interaction in WebXR. Yeah, thanks for listening. Bye.
Wonderful session. Covered a lot of ground there. And against all odds, we also have Florian here with us. Florian, welcome to the stream from somewhere in the middle of Germany.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, so I was traveling and got into traffic, so I'm just middle of nowhere here in Germany. But I've
Amazing
made
to
it.
still have you here.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thanks a lot.
We already have some questions here. The first question being by Giorgio Tedesco. Boulderworld, because you're a climber or just for fun?
I'm not a climber personally. I do enjoy climbing, but I don't really do it as a sport recreationally. I just thought it would be an interesting project. As you know, Jonathan already made a tutorial on climbing, so I thought, hey, let me build up on that. And what started off as like a small side project grew up in size and capabilities, and we thought that just climbing works really well in VR, and we just wanted to make a game that is more polished than what we've done before. And we figured out we could make a really solid game design with climbing mechanics. And from what we've created so far, I'm really proud of this game because of how well-rounded it is. Like the menu, the items, they work well together, and we can just build so much more on this game. And we have all these ideas that are coming together. So there's going to be a couple updates coming that are going to really push the boundary of what this game has been so far. So I'm really excited about that. I just like the mechanics. That's where I usually go from. I like the mechanics, and then I build stuff on top of those. Yeah.
Super. One can feel your excitement. That is absolutely amazing. Next question by Kibloy is, for editing the world or menus, do you directly work inside the Wonderland editor, or do you import it from some other software?
Yeah. So the world is mostly created in Blender, so that they're modeled and textured with Blender and Photoshop, and that a 3D artist does it who works with us, Sophia. She's really great. And she also did the design and the logo and things, and she exports those as separate assets onto our Google Drive, which I, as a developer, then take and integrate into the engine. Sometimes she also integrates 3D assets into the engine herself, but when it comes to doing things like menus that are very programmatically intensive, you need animations, you need clickability, you need interactions. Those stuff I usually do myself. I put them together either in Blender or Wonderland. For the menu, it's usually in Blender, because then I can actually like check the proportions and size it a bit and change the UVs if something is wrong, like the fine tech art stuff. and then I import and do everything in Wonderland Engine usually, especially when it comes with interacting with script code. I need to have a specific hierarchy that works together with the scripts, so that, for example, I change the images of specific buttons or things like that. Those need to be referenced usually.
I just read someone said you have an amazing skybox on your webcam.
Yeah, it's a IRL skybox for sure. I just have like a circular dome around me that does it. Thank you.
Amazing. Yinch asks, what are the limitations of local storage, like maximum limit and persistence?
I could look that up right now. I'm not exactly sure what the limits are, to be honest. I know there are some limitations, but essentially you can take it pretty far. It's basically JSON data, right? You just serialize JSON data and save it, and you can do a lot with it. But what I would definitely not recommend doing is saving long strings in there. Just try to encode your information and keep it short, and have it maybe like, instead of saving level names, you are just going to put like indices, obviously. So that makes really sense.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I'm actually not familiar with the limitations, but I know that on Safari there's specific limitations, as always.
Yeah, it's going to be different for every browser, I assume, as well. But you can be. I think everyone should try it out and figure it out and tell me one day. I'd like to know myself. But basically, you could technically also use multiple keys in case like you would hit a limit. You would just create a second key, basically like a second set of information that you use as save data. So you would have, for world 1 you have the key world 1 save data, and for world 2 you would have world 2 save data, and that would also you could scale on that way instead of on the size of one key.
Okay, cool. One question from me while chat collects their thoughts. Since you're also a founder of Construct Arcade, how does the goals of Boulderworld play into the goals of Construct Arcade?
So one of the things that we want to make sure is also, when we started Boulderworld, was also to see how could we put in monetization into the game for future developers to actually take as an example or as a motivation to also pursue making games in WebXR that are also financially sustainable. And for that, we thought of selling two things. So one of them is more content. So it would be levels or new gameplay mechanics that would include something like an endless mode, which we are currently working on, or also specific cosmetic items. So we have an update coming soon that it will be selling premium hand gloves, or like a belt that's a bit more unique than just a color change. So things that we've put time and effort in. It's rather experimentatious at this point, because we don't have it, let's say, on a level where we are 100% sure that it's going to work, but we're trying to push the limits of what has been done before to see if people are actually, how much are people willing to invest? Are people actually willing to invest in a game that has long-term retention and is actually fun to play, and has long-term content updates? Because the way we structure the game, it also allows us to iterate on levels quite fast. You just have to, copy a level basically and move all the handles into place, and you have a new level. And there's nothing that you need to programmatically do basically to create a new level. You could just have a designer there and just use Wonderland Engine to place the objects, and it's basically finished. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, so you're basically spearheading monetization for all WebXR developers there. An inevitable question that was from NSTCG. Is there any plan for making Boulderworld multiplayer?
Yes, there are ideas. I wouldn't say plans, but I definitely want to do that, because kind of a low-hanging fruit once there's a stable multiplayer structure supporting it. The Wonderland networking stuff that I wrote sometimes is not super reliable. So that's the biggest hurdle of why I haven't like gone and implemented just a simple multiplayer. Essentially, it is pretty simple because you're just sending over our position data, and if both players are playing the same game and the positions are synced, so they could just technically just climb around together. But I also want to see a level design that kind of fits the multiplayer aspect, so people maybe helping each other climb, or actually solving together some sort of a climbing puzzle, something like that. Just making routes climbable as a race is fun, but I'd want to have something more interesting.
Awesome.
But yeah, there's plans for sure.
Very cool. I think that concludes the Q&A. Thank you so much for making it here, despite the trouble of almost not being able to. And
Yes.
thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you for being a great part of the community. And I wish you a great rest of your day. Bye, Florian.
Thank you very much for having me. It's really fun to be part of the Wonderland community, and I'm just sorry I missed all the other talks. I saw some of the Q&A that Sorskoot did, and some of his talk, but I'm looking forward to having more of these. Thank you, Jonathan, for hosting these.
Well, thank you for the kind words. Bye, Florian.
Bye.
Wonderful. And that concludes our sessions for today. Thanks again, Yinch, Timmy, and Florian. You've been an invaluable part of the community, and you are effectively what makes Wonderland Engine great. Without examples, or without the open source work that you're doing, or without the innovative kind of spearheading of all the areas that you're doing, WebXR would probably not be as far as it is today, and would probably move forward a lot slower. With that, everyone watching should definitely go and join our Discord server. You can find it easily through discord.wonderlandengine.com, or find it through the QR code here. If you want to rewatch any of these sessions, we are going to upload them to YouTube soon. And with that, thank you everyone for joining the first Wonderland Engine Communities Workshop. Thanks for everyone watching on Twitch. Thanks for everyone on YouTube. I invite you to join the conversation and continue the conversation on the Wonderland Engine Discord channel. See you in our next event.